right, good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed the coffee break. My name is Almog Aley-Raz, and I'm the CEO of CorNeat Vision. We have developed a unique technology that enables us to attach synthetic material to the human tissue, and specifically to the ocular tissue. And CorNeat, or the CorNeat K-Pro, is the first product we're coming out of. The cornea is the front window of our eye. That's transparent tissue, and basically it's responsible for 70% of the eye optical power. Together with the lens, it focuses light on the retina, creating an image in our mind. The cornea itself consists of 5 different layers, so it's more like our skin, like an organ, and not like a layer of cells. And it needs to be spherical and transparent for us to be able to see. When your cornea is damaged, this is how your world looks like. There are many different indications that can deform the cornea, scar it, or make it opaque. And these people are blind people, if they're blinded with both eyes, and this is how they view the world. Around the world, there are about 2 million new cases of corneal blindness each year, and the only solution out there, the only practical solution, is corneal transplantation, a procedure that is executed at a rate of about 150,000 times a year globally, and it's not growing in the past couple of decades. This means that all the rest stay blind, and over the years, the amount of people that are blind in the world are over $60 million, over 60 million people. About 10 million are bilaterally blind. The problem is different from region to region. In the Western Hemisphere, where there is abundant tissue and a developed ophthalmic practice, 20% of the patient would stay blind because they're not candidate for the operation or a failed one. There are places where there are no doctors, no cornea banks. In China, for example, there are over 10 million people in the waiting line for corneal transplantations and only 5,000 transplantations a year. There are some places like Italy where the amount of doctors that can do this procedure limits the rate of implantation. You need to wait a few years until you get into the line. Transplantation, which is the replacement of the cornea using donor tissue, is a very known procedure. One can replace the whole cornea, like here in the center. This is penetrating keratoplasty, and today doctors can replace just the outer or inner layers. The success rates mainly depends on the medical indication. On average, we're looking at an 85% success rate, meaning the person would be able to see through that cornea 2 years post-operation. And if it's just a genetical deformation of the shape, like keratoconus, there is 90% success rate, and the more sick the eye is, the success rates drop to a point where a person would not be a candidate for the operation. The optical quality cannot be predetermined. It depends on the tissue, on the surgeon, and on other aspects. And of course, there are many places where there's lack of tissue, even in places like in Israel, where I come from. Previous attempts to develop artificial solutions have failed miserably. None have been able to address this global need. The solution here in the center was removed from the shelves a few years back because it actually didn't stick in the eye. Apparently, it's very challenging to attach a lens, a plastic lens or a synthetic lens, to the corneal tissue because there are no blood vessels there. There is no vascularization. The only last resort solution in the market is basically what's here on the left called the Boston K-Pro, which leverage a ring of tissue for doing the integration. So if you have herpes keratitis and you're not a candidate for transplantation, you can put this device, and even if the red tissue would be attacked by the virus, you would still have your central vision open because it's plastic over there. On the right, there is a procedure called osteodonto, which leverage a jawbone to make the biological integration. It's very robust, but again, the procedure is very dramatic and it's very anesthetic. So that's not going anywhere. We are trying to solve this from a totally different angle. Basically, unlike all previous solutions, including the biological tissue, which try to attach something to the corneal tissue, native cornea, an area that, as I mentioned, lacks blood vessels, fibroblasts, and vascularization, and heals very poorly. By the way, after corneal transplantation, the strength of the connection is 20% of what it was originally. We are leveraging a virtual space that exists under the conjunctiva, the white part of the eye, an area which is rich with blood vessels and scars very aggressively. My partner, who's done his specialty in retinal surgery, actually said, well, while naturally you can easily separate the conjunctiva from the eye wall, if you penetrate to operate the backside of the eye through this area, this point actually scars in a way that cannot be separated anymore, only by dissection. So that's where the idea came from. We are making the integration using a non-degradable nanofabric material produced using a technology called electrospinning company. These are polymers that do not degrade in the human body. They're biocompatible, and basically what they do is they mimic the extracellular matrix, the skeleton of our tissue, and actually making the cells grow into this material versus rejecting it. These dimensions actually go under the radar in terms of our immune system and does not create any immune system response. There's a short movie that shows how the device works. Here you see the optical piece surrounded by the skirt. It's just for illustration purposes here, but this is how it looks under a scanning electronic microscope. And those two are bonded together from both sides. Here's an example of a candidate for a keratoplasty, or someone that is not a candidate because the blood vessels are present in the cornea. And what we do in the operation is first, it's called peritomy, which is lifting the conjunctiva off the eye wall. Takes a few minutes. It's a very simple procedure. It can be done under local anesthesia. We do trephination like with cornea transplantations. And once we've done that, using a special tool, we are able to fit our device into the patient's eye. It's like replacing a tire on a wheel in a way that it looks. But the idea is to keep the pressure and the integrity of the eye for the short term. We cannot rely on the cornea edge to last for long. Instead, we let the biology do the integration. By covering this material, we actually have been able to prove that our tenon cell, the fibroblasts, are growing through the material with presence of collagen inside this material, no inflammation. There is some animation here, but today we have slides that shows end-to-end proliferation of fibroblast through this material. By enabling the connection on the conjunctiva, we're able to present a very wide aperture field of view, very aesthetic solution. The procedure is much simpler than cornea transplants, and the healing time is much, much faster, and eventually leading to a lifelong retention of the device. We've patented this technology. We already received, we're in the national phase, registering this in 13 different jurisdictions around the world. All our 20 claims were reviewed by the European Patent Office and were accepted. The 21st is actually the procedure itself, which is patentable in the States. As I mentioned, the visual acuity, actually there are holes here on the perimeter that enables post-operative cataract surgery and retinal surgery. The healing time and retention and the scalability of this solution is something that the ophthalmologists have never seen before. We've started our journey early 2016, did a few prototypes and implanted them in what is the animal model for the FDA, which is a rabbit. We raised our seed round and invested this money in figuring out the manufacturing process, certifying the company with ISO, and actually executing all of the biocompatibility tests needed for such an implant. We started our animal implantation, our formal animal implantation, earlier this year, and are 2 months away from completing and ticking that checkbox, which is the last checkbox before we can go into the clinical phase. We also did some experiments with cadaver eyes to make sure that our design is actually real. This is from last week. This is a rabbit 4 months post-implantation. This resembles 2 years in humans. And as you can see, it looks very natural. The rabbit uses this eye, and there's actually, if you look from a meter away, you can hardly tell which eye was the operated one. It all looks good. There's a slide on the manufacturing process. It's pretty complex to do a 3D electrospinning fixtures, and we had to solve a lot of manufacturing challenges around this. Today we are manufacturing the lens in the States, the nanofabric material here in the UK, and other vendors in Germany and China and others. But the end product is basically now been validated, and we can scale up this production line with a small investment. We have a very experienced team. I'm actually coming to this from the high-tech industry. I did an exit and grew a $100 million business as part of corporate America. Gilad Litin is a good friend. He actually approached me with a doctor's presentation toward a meeting with an investor. I redone it and eventually fell in love with, I shouldn't say fell in love, it's not good, but I realized that the potential is huge, and it's been a very exciting couple of years. Gilad is now working 70% with the company, which is very rare in this space, and the rest of the time he does surgery. He's one of the most gifted ophthalmologists in the country. We have a very strong team of advisors. I actually removed the text that was here before, but these are the leaders in cornea and anterior chamber ophthalmology in the world. The names here are front stage people that have hundreds of followers. Many of them have many inventions, surgical inventions and medical device inventions. So we are set with a clinical trial because each and every one of them will be an active participant in that phase. As I mentioned, we're nearing the end of the biocompatibility test and the animal implantations, and we are about to embark a multinational, multi-site clinical study that will have sites in Israel, France, China, Canada, and the United States. Basically, we're going in parallel after a 510K clearance in the US, a CE mark, and a Chinese FDA. If we limit our indications to people with no solution, then we only need to prove safety to enter the market, which translates to 20 patients in the US with 1 year follow-up. The Chinese FDA actually required 100 with additional 2 sites in China, and we're all already set up for this. Our way to market is pretty straightforward. This is a very centralized market. All of these surgeons meet once a year in every continent to learn new things and to get exposed to new information, new devices at the ESCRS. I just came back from Vienna where there were 10,000 attendees. And by training these doctors and focusing on getting the word out, we believe that we can get to a very high numbers in terms of market penetration. If you look at just a simple example, I should say, if we enter the market with 50 trained ophthalmologists that each and every one do 5 operations a month, with a transfer price of about $3,000, you get to $10 million off the bat by entering this way. And our focus is totally on training and getting all these advisory board members to actually experience the operations and be part of the clinical trial because they are the key to reaching and exceeding these numbers. Let's do another second. CorNeat Vision was the first prize winner of the China's innovation competition, the largest one actually in the world, in Shenzhen a few months back. This is the Minister of Science of China shaking my partner's hand following that win. We also were awarded the Biomed Startup of the Year here in Israel, and we've submitted an application for a EU grant and got the Seal of Excellence from the Horizon 2020 program. We hope to get some funding in the next round, but just some third-party validations of this innovation and its impact. These are the words of one of the leaders in the industry. We do hope that we will translate this into reality. And basically, what we're about is to turn this into something that looks more like this. In terms of our funding round, we have started a funding round a few months ago with the aim of raising $12 million. We already closed 7 out of these 12, all from private investors. So we never approached the VC industry up until the last couple of weeks. And we're looking to get this additional funding to enable us to have a bit more slack. We don't want to run out of money as we approach the end of the regulatory process. But we also have a couple of other products that leverage the same technology, the same material for additional ophthalmic indications, specifically glaucoma and a scleral patch that leverage the same skirt. It's a product in itself. And I'm here to meet some investors and hopefully get this done and go back to focus on execution. Thank you.